Okay, well, that brings us right about to 11. We had some more join, a few might straggle in as well. Appreciate you all for taking the time and joining us today. It'll be a quick webinar. We know we all have Zoom fatigue, and I know you all are Zoom masters, so I won't spend any time on the chat box of the questions. Uh, Today we have joining us Alex DeRosa and Kyle Metcalf from our 3+One team. My name is Chase Brofman. I'm from the California State Association of Counties Finance Corporation. And CashFest is a supported program by us at CSAC FC as well as NACO, a great organization, and they have some great tools, tips, and tricks for us today regarding ARP funds and leveraging data. Guys, I just wanted to go ahead and thank you for joining us and jump right in. I know we have a quick webinar today, and we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. I do kind of want to open it up with a polling question for our attendees. So I'm going to launch this, and we want to know: has your agency received all of its expected ARP funds? Whether you've received all of them, not quite yet, or some of it. And so that'll give us a good idea of where in the process your agency is with receiving those funds. I'll leave that poll open for just a little while, and Alex and Kyle, I'll let you guys take it from there.
Thank you so much, Chase, and thank you to CSAC for having us today. My name is Alex DeRosa, and I'm from 3+One. Really excited to have the opportunity to speak with everyone this morning, and wanted to start with just a few quick data points on current events that I think most of us are probably very aware of, but I want to relate it to specifically what we're talking about today, specifically with liquidity and the banking marketplace. So this first data point that you'll see in this slide is a graph showing the United States federal debt over time. Certainly no secret that we have a large and growing federal debt. But if you look specifically at the very right-hand side of that graph, just in the past year, we've seen a significant increase since the beginning of 2020, obviously due to the COVID pandemic and the amount of stimulus that has been injected into our marketplace, both from the Federal Reserve and from the federal government. But then if you move to the next slide and take a look at our next data point, which is the total amount of demand deposits in banking institutions across the United States. Look at that drastic increase just in the past 12 to 18 months that we've seen since the beginning of 2020 and the onset of the COVID pandemic. Obviously, we did see a gradual increase over time, but we saw a larger year-over-year increase from 2020 to 2021 in bank deposits than we have at any other point in United States history. Any banker that you talk to will certainly have plenty of stories to tell you about how much their business has changed over the past 12 to 18 months, whether it be the PPP program, just a significant increase in deposits, a decrease in the demand for loans. At the end of the day, the banking marketplace has shifted, and that's a very important thing that public entities need to be ready to manage because of the power that your liquidity as a public entity holds when you can maximize that value with your banking providers. So that's what we're going to focus on today: is how has this marketplace shifted? What does it mean for your ARP dollars, but also what does it mean for all of your operating dollars? Because we want to help you all maximize every single dollar, whether it's a general fund operating tax dollar or the American Rescue Plan funds that will be sticking around for a few years here. But that's just a couple quick data points that clearly show why things have changed so much. And I'm sure whether it be through an investment pool or your banking providers, you all on the webinar today have seen a change in the banking marketplace over the past 12 to 18 months. So we want to talk about some new and innovative ways we can move forward and try to find some additional value. So a big topic that we're going to touch on today is, of course, liquidity data. Liquidity and cash flow are similar, but a little bit different. Cash flow is typically what you're going to see on the accounting side in your finance offices, in a public finance administrative office. Liquidity is what we're looking at on the bank side. What do banks have available of your resources on deposit? One easy example to showcase that difference is, of course, when a check is written from a public entity, According to your accounting software, those funds are gone, out of sight, out of mind. But on the liquidity side, those funds are still being collateralized at your bank until they eventually are cleared and deposited somewhere else. So there can be some significant differences between liquidity and cash flow. And Kyle is going to take us through some steps here that we can look at specific liquidity data that can help us maximize those resources at the bank and ensure that your taxpayers are receiving the most value they possibly can.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you, Chase, and the whole CSAC organization. Really appreciate the partnership and looking forward to continuing work with California entities. We've really enjoyed working with them so far. And thanks, Alex. And on the liquidity picture, this is really an example of what you would receive in one of our reports. And we get this and we start and we look at 24 months of banking transaction data. Every credit, every debit that hits all of your bank accounts across the entire entity. And we put a duration capability on those dollars. And so what does that mean? From the day that dollar receives, or you receive that dollar until when that needs to be expended, how long do you have it for? And what value does that have in the marketplace? And so for this example entity, you can see that there is multiple different durations capabilities throughout this chart. So as you get lower down to the bottom of the graph, those are longer term dollars that we can go out and we can look for opportunities in the marketplace to earn the most value on. You know, the further that we can identify dollars to go out and maximize the value, the greater value that you'll have on those dollars. And so as we move up the chart closer to your operating cash, those are dollars that are going to need to be more liquid. And so we certainly understand that, you know, there's going to need to be operating cash and money that's not available to be locked up in necessarily fixed income opportunities. So taking a look at the whole liquidity picture and really using your data, this is tailored to each client that we work with. So this is your information. Everything that we provide will be based strictly on your entity. And how can we take that information and get the most value in the marketplace and for your taxpayers? And so an example of what we could do with that data, this was actually a recent CD quote that we went out for, and it was a $1 million CD for 12 months was the duration capability on those dollars, or how long those funds were available for. And as you can see, there's a big difference in the marketplace. I'm sure many of you say, well, there's no yield on CDs. Why would I want to go into fixed income? But you know, we found that there is value. It takes a lot of door knocking and a lot of, you know, searching for those opportunities, but there are banking partners out there that want to provide value on those dollars. And you can see, you know, one bank offered 35 basis points on a year. I mean, 18 months ago, we would have thought 35 basis points on 12 months, that's crazy. But, you know, now that's a competitive rate in the marketplace, and it's above peer benchmark data that we collect. So, you know, this is some data points that we're able to provide entities and help them maximize the value of those dollars and making sure that it's a fair and equitable relationship with your banking partners.
Kyle, if I could interject quickly, I think Chase has another poll question that would be really relevant on this slide because of exactly what Kyle was just referencing in the significant difference we're seeing between banks in the marketplace. So Chase, if you could share that poll question that was regarding banks that might be charging fees in this current environment. We'd love to hear if there are entities out there that might be facing that.
Yeah, I'm going to launch that right now, and that'll give a clear picture of, you know, what the relationship looks like, and have those agencies reached out to the bank and got that interaction in regards to those banking fees. And so we'll leave that open for a little while, and you guys can move right along.
Thank you so much, Chase, because just like those rates that you see there can be such a significant difference on what banks are able and willing to do for public entities. There are some local community banks that might say we will never charge a fee in any situation. And there are other larger regional or national and multinational banks that issue monthly analysis statements and are ready and willing to charge thousands of dollars of fees every month. So being aware of what's available in the marketplace and the services that go along with any of those fees are so important for public entities to consistently monitor. And that's another key data point that every entity should be aware of.
Absolutely, Alex. Thanks for adding that. Just one quote we'd like to share from a longtime client and friend, really, in Allegheny County, New York. And she said, "It has been one of the greatest things I think I've done in my career here at Allegheny County through the whole 37 years." And really, at the time when Terry Ross joined us, this was cutting edge technology. And really what this has transitioned into is a best practice, as CSAC and NACO have identified. This is a best practice now for counties. It's technology that's available and should be widely used. And I think one of that new technology that we're able to do is the forward forecast that Alex is going to talk about here in the next slide.
Thank you, Kyle. And to Kyle's point from a few minutes ago, this is information generated using an innovative technology, but also using your data that truly belongs to public entities, that's already out there, already exists. And now we've just created some technology to help leverage that data and put it into actionable information. So that first model that was shown on Kyle's slide that was looking mostly at longer term dollars, identifying some of those dollars that are available for sometimes 2, 3, even 4+ years that can be maximized in the marketplace. What we're showing on this screen is a short-term forecast, something that's projecting forward and showing an entity what their liquidity position is likely to be in the coming months based on the past 24 months of information at a minimum. Sometimes it's much larger. And that information can be so powerful, one, for planning what type of tools you're using to manage your liquidity, because you'll be able to see weekly cash balance breakdowns and be able to project when there are going to be significant changes, whether they be increases in balances. So you might be looking at setting a reminder for yourself to push some additional funds over to a state pool, or a decrease in balances. So you can have a note for yourself, we better have some CDs maturing at this point in time because we're going to need that liquidity. And that's such powerful information when you're trying to consistently maximize the value of taxpayer dollars, because as we've already touched on, it can be tough enough just trying to manage the marketplace and finding what opportunities are most competitive before you even get to your own information and what availability you have with your own cash. So when you can leverage this data and this technology to give you the answers to those questions without spending any time on it, it frees you and your office up to do so much more that can lead to additional value being brought to the taxpayers. And one more quick point on a forecast that's based on your own data is that you can look backwards after this 3 or 6 month period has gone by and see how you did compared to the forecast. And when you know that this forecast is strictly based on your own previous information, if you see a significant difference, you should be able to point to a specific point in time and take a look at what might have changed. Why was our April of 2021 significantly different than that of 2020 and 2019? And is that something we should expect to continue to change into the future? Having the ability to hone in on very specific data points like that gives your office the capability to drill down deeper into some of those questions if they ever arise. And if nothing else, like I mentioned earlier, it can save you so much time on what tools you want to be using and when you're going to need those tools based on having these forward forecast planning tools. The next slide is just a quick quote that we always like to reference after a forward forecast, and that's the power of knowing allows for stronger communication with all financial providers. I alluded to that additional time you can save when you have this data at your fingertips. What you can do with that time is increase your communication, not only amongst your financial providers, but also amongst your own departments within your agency or your county. When you're able to have this information at your fingertips without spending any time to get to those answers, you can spend more time sharing that information with your financial providers, your banks, and your investment providers to find out if they have other opportunities available based on how long your cash is available for, according to this data. And you can also share this data with your own internal stakeholders, whether it be a county administrator or board of supervisors or other department heads, to show them maybe why you're asking a little bit, a few more questions than usual about maybe an upcoming project with borrowed proceeds. And it's because you're using that information and that cash to maximize value for the taxpayers. So when you have all this information in a clear, understandable manner, you can just improve that communication amongst your own internal stakeholders and external partners like your banks and investment providers. The next slide quickly shows one reason why all of this information, specifically liquidity data, can matter to millions of dollars for public entities. What you see here is the framework for local go ratings by S&P. And as you can see by that, where that purple circle is, the liquidity of a public entity now makes up about 10% of the total score for any time you go out for a credit rating. About 10% of that score. So when you can provide S&P or other rating agencies with data like this showing that you have stress tested your cash to see how long it's available for, and you're forecasting your cash forward, and then still holding yourself accountable to see how accurate those forecasts are, that's the type of information that credit rating agencies and potential investors in your municipal debt want to see. And that's what can lead to an increased score. And as I'm sure you all know, on the next slide, we just quickly note a boost in your credit rating can save millions of dollars over many years for your county, your agency, and your taxpayers. So that's just another reason why the public marketplace is telling us liquidity matters. And this is something that every public entity should be taking advantage of.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that, Alex. And I think just a great example on that credit rating was a client who took our liquidity data directly to the rating agencies and said, here's where we're at, here's what we're planning for, here's what we're expecting, and it actually resulted in a small bump in their credit rating, which saved them over $1 million. And it was a smaller entity, but it's the impact of planning. And I think one thing we can all agree on is that nothing bad has ever come from planning. So I think that's a great takeaway for today. And then kind of to sum things up, results of liquidity data, as we talked about, a sample, just client case study, $154.9 million operating budget. When the county started working with us, they had approximately $46 million that was identified as invested. After stress testing and running the data on the county's data, we were able to find an additional $75 million, which could earn better value. And regardless of an interest rate environment, if interest rates are high or low, that's a huge impact to the taxpayers. And since the start of the relationship, we've been able to identify and realize $9.2 million in additional earnings. Since additional value, since May of 2018. And really beyond the additional value that they've earned, it's provided them a framework and more confidence and reduced the amount of time that they need to spend focused on managing their liquidity with assurance from a third party that they are maximizing the value of every single dollar. So I think with that, we'll kick it back over to, I'm sorry. It's a little too early. We had one quick update on American Rescue Plan Act funds and just some best practices that we've seen and identified as, I don't know if Chase, we have the results from that poll question in terms of where everybody was at on their rescue plan dollars.
Yeah, it said that approximately 2/3 have received it, and a third has not yet.
Great. Well, that's awesome. And so certainly recommend opening up a separate bank account to manage and organize those dollars, keeping them there. I think it'll just make the accounting side much simpler, much cleaner for when reports need to be generated. And if anyone's ever to question what the funds are being used for, there's a clear track. Also, new guidance states that you can keep yield earned on these funds and used for general fund purposes. So any money that is earned on those American Rescue Plan dollars can be used for any other source. It doesn't necessarily just need to be the allowable sources from similar to the CARES Act. So that I think just incentivizes everybody to really come up with a plan for these dollars and maximize the value of them while you do have them until they need to be spent. And also our fee for providing this liquidity data is an allowable expense. And the most recent guidance did say that, our fee would be covered under the Rescue Plan Act. There's also a link to our blog here, which I'm sure can be circulated, or actually the NACO blog, which has additional details on that. So with that, I think we will kick it over to Chase now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. I'm really glad that they allowed the interest earnings to be used in the general fund, as well as service providers. And I know you guys shared a few charts today, some from Fred, but some that are self-produced. And I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, that's just two, I think you showed two of a plethora of different analysis that you provide to an agency. I mean, it can be a packet sometimes, or, of sorts.
It can certainly be overwhelming. As Kyle alluded to, we see every single debit and every credit out of every account, every single bank account. So when you have that much information, the customability or customization opportunities of that data is really cool to show entities and how we can present that data in the most beneficial way for them. So it gives them so much flexibility to say, well, what if we looked at this group of accounts a certain way and stress tested these, and can really hone in on certain business segments that might be in a little need of extra attention at any one point in time. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. One of the questions that we had come in was about security, right? Because I know we've seen a lot of on the macro side of cybersecurity hacks and whatnot. And so talk a little bit about kind of what on your end, because you're going to be, the agencies provide you with a lot of information. And so security wise, maybe address that question a little bit.
Absolutely. That's a great question, and one that we hear from most public entities, and one that I'm glad we do hear from most public entities, because as we all know, any sort of cybersecurity issue, especially on financial information, is front page news. That's some headlines that no one wants to be made. So when we collect information at 3+One, we're leveraging the technology and the security of your most important financial providers, which are your banks and your investment partners. So we secure what's called view-only access, or BAI2 access, to your banking and investment information. So we're going directly into your banking portals or your investment portals and pulling the data from there, rather than asking entities to download information and send it over email or scan statements and print things out. That's what we really talk about when we're speaking to leveraging technology, because the amount of information that's out there is impossible to manage by hand or by sending via email and things like that, when we've spent plenty of time building portals of information that can go directly into those bank servers that are protected with billions of dollars of technology from some of those big banks. And that's the most secure way for us to get information and to ensure that the county's or agency's information is where it belongs, on that bank site, and not being downloaded and sent across email to places.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like you said, nobody wants to end up on the front page news there, and it's definitely something that all agencies are looking at across the board. And so, I know we're a few minutes early on our 30-minute time slot that we had. However, what I want to do is thank the attendees for joining us today, as well as let them know we will send out this presentation as well as the contact information for the presenters today. The recording will be available, so all of that will go out after the webinar. And thanks, guys. Appreciate you, Alex and Kyle. Thanks for taking the time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Chase, and appreciate all you do at CSAC for all the counties that you serve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Until next time,
everyone.
Jason.
Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.